every filmmaker that I speak to, every independent filmmaker says, I'm going to New Mexico because they give a 25% tax credit, and it's an extra 10% if you shoot outside what they call the zone, Albuquerque, Santa Fe. So it's 35. So I'm going to shoot in, southern New Mexico, and then I'm going to get 35%. And my budget is $1 million. So I'm going to get $350,000 in tax credits. No, you're not. All right. First of all, you're only getting tax credits on the expenses that qualify. So you have to do your math properly so that you understand how the numbers actually play out. Because a lot of people after the fact say, wait a second, I was expecting $350,000 and only got $220,000. They say, yeah, because that's how the program works. Did you not read it? Did you not do your math? Did you not figure it out? And a lot of filmmakers make that error.
Are there any things you can throw into a deal, maybe like little cherries on tops or things to sweeten the deal for an investor that are not just cash or equity based?
Of course there are. We call that the Hollywood element, or or the I call it the fun stuff. All right. So why would a person like me who only invests in real estate and stocks invest in a movie? One, because I think I can make a decent return on my investment. So that $680,000 that I'm going to get in addition to my 680, that's what we call ROI, return on investment, or otherwise known as profit. All right. So the main reason I'm going to do it is because I'm hoping to get a decent return on investment. Now, film is a very high risk investment, and chances are most times you don't get a good return on your investment. But if you trust the filmmaker and you like the plan and everything like that, then you're investing in trying to get a good ROI, return on investment. In addition to that, film is a fun thing to invest in. Why? Because Sally could also offer me a couple things. She could say, hey, Jeff, if you come in at $680,000, I'm going to give you the following things. One, I'm going to give you an executive producer credit on the movie. So your name's going to be on the movie. It's going to be on IMDb. You're going to be a filmmaker, and you can tell all your friends that you made a film. That's fun. It's, a lot of people like that. Two, I'm going to invite you and your family to a premiere screening, black tie premiere screening, and we're going to acknowledge you. And it's going to be a really fun evening, or you're going to pretend you're a big Hollywood mogul, even though, it's a small film, but we're going to have some fun with it. Three, if you want, and this is up to you, you can have a cameo role in the movie. All right. You and your family, we'll put you in the background. We're not necessarily going to let you talk, but we'll put you into a scene or two where you're sitting in the background. When they go into the lecture hall or the convention center or something and they walk by, you're going to be there. So you're actually going to be in the movie. You're going to be on set. Your kids are going to be in the movie, and it's a thrill. It's a fun time to be in a movie, and it'll be forever. You'll always see yourself in the movie, so it's bragging rights. Three, or the next thing, you're going to come to set. You can come to set, 3 times. You can stand with the director, watch the director do the action. You'll have lunch with the cast and crew. You'll feel it's a real fun experience. It's a Hollywood experience. You're going to get, to understand and be part of that. So if you like this whole movie making experience, then in addition to hopefully getting a decent return on your investment, you're going to get this whole experience of being part of making a movie. And a credit and a cameo and all this stuff is way more fun than some boring real estate investment that you're going to do, where you're not going to have anything like this. That's the fun stuff. That's why we call it the fun stuff. So, and that's enticing. That's very enticing to a lot of investors. All right, assuming that they trust you and feel like you're going to get the core stuff, which is make a good film. But this is fun. It's fun for them to come with their families and be part of the whole movie making thing and be in it and get a credit, and that's the fun stuff. Okay, so where was I? I forgot. Okay, so now you've got you. Okay, so now you're going to hopefully make this movie. You got $700,000, right? All right. So the big question is, let's say you can't get 700,000. All right. Let's say me as the investor, I say I'm only willing to give you 480,000. Okay, 500,000, not 700. So the question you have to decide, Sally, is, are you willing to spend the next year or so of your life making the movie and putting in $200,000 of your time and effort investing it in order to get the movie done, because now you only have $500,000 of cash, but 200,000 of it was going to go to you to pay for you, producer, director, editor, right? But now I'm not giving you that 200. So you have to invest that. That's going to be your sweat equity. And now you're going to do the exact same thing you were going to do had I paid you to do it. But now I'm not going to pay you. You're going to put the time and investment in. So now instead of you being an investor of $20,000, you're going to be an investor of $220,000, and I'm going to be an investor of 480,000. Would you be willing to do that?
I would say no, just because I feel like, just me personally, my skill set, I wouldn't I would prefer to hire an editor than have myself
Okay,
edit.
but assuming, forget that, that's personalizing it too much. Assuming you do have the skill set, the reason you would say no, it would be only one reason. Would be you would say, you know what, Jeff, I understand exactly what you're trying to do with that deal. You want me to have as much risk as possible, but the thing is, like you, I need to live. Okay, I need to pay rent. I need to buy groceries. I need to pay the lease on my car. So I need money. I can't work for free for the next year because I can't afford to, because otherwise I'll get evicted because I'm not paying the rent. So I need to make something. I need to make at least, say, $50,000 of the 200 that I would normally be getting paid, so that I could at least cover my expenses. That would be a reasonable thing to ask. All right. I can't, as much as I would like to work for free and invest my time, I just can't, because I don't have enough savings to pay for all the stuff that I need to do to live. So, or maybe say, I'll take half of it as what we call a deferred payment, and half of it I will, for, I'll work for, you have to pay me. So the budget, so instead of making the cash budget 700,000, I'm willing to bring it down to 600,000. I will only draw $100,000 of salary this year because I need to in order to live. And the other $100,000, as you're getting paid back when we recouping, when we're getting the revenue in. So you'll get paid back in first position your 600,000. And then, but in next position, I'm going to get paid back my $100,000, because I worked for it. And that's what we call a deferred investment, sweat equity, or deferred salary. And it could be that you're not the only one deferring. It could be that you ask all of your crew to defer collectively another 100,000, because the investor says, I'm only putting in 500. So you say, okay, I'll defer 100, and then 5 other top crew people, you'll each defer 20, and that'll be 200,000 in deferrals, so we can get the movie made. As the money comes back in, you might say to your investor, I'll tell you what, we'll have 200,000 in deferrals, but we want our deferrals paid in first position from the first money that gets paid back, because that's labor. Then thereafter, you'll get paid back your investment. So these are all discussion points as to how to set up the deal. And that's how you can get a deal done, by doing deferrals. All right. So now you're going to make your movie. So now whatever it is, 500, 600, 700,000 in the cash, you've figured that out. In any case, you know that you have the resources to make your movie. So let's say we're deferring 100,000 total. So you've got 600 in the bank. You're going to defer 100. So you're going to make a $700,000 movie. So now the question is, where do you make that movie? And do you try to get a tax credit so that you can pay back some of that money with the tax credit financing? Okay. This is why I look at it as revenue, as a tax credit. So at the beginning of this conversation, I said, as I go through the scenario, see why I look at it as revenue as opposed to financing, for 2 reasons. One is it's too expensive to finance a tax credit on a low budget indie film. But 2 is, realistically, the timing of it's kind of like revenue. That's what it is. So, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you need that tax credit, because you're not sure exactly how much the tax credit is going to be, by the way, which you and I are going to talk about in a second. So you want to be very predictable. So just get all your money up front in your financing package. Then you can say to your investor, you being one of the investors, you can say, look, even though it's a huge financial risk, we know we're going to choose to shoot, and I'm going to choose New Mexico. We're going to shoot New Mexico. we're going to get a 25% tax credit on our qualified expenditure. So when all is said and done, not everything's going to qualify. And Sally, you'll talk about this because you know how all this works. So the total tax credit that we think we're going to get is going to amount to 20% of 700,000, which is 140,000, the example I used before. So we're thinking we're going to get $140,000 tax credit. Here's why. We've applied, we've gone through all the motions, we've disqualified certain costs, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be 140,000. So you say to your investor, the first money that likely will come in about a year after we make the movie, 6 months to a year, will be the $140,000. So you can either say, the 100 of it we're going to use to pay the deferrals because we need the money. The people who who deferred their salaries, and then the next 40,000 is going to go to you. So we know for sure we're going to get some revenue in because it's a tax credit. And we can depend on the state of New Mexico to pay their tax credits unless they go bankrupt, which they likely won't, but it's possible. All right. Or you can say to your investor, I'll give you the first $140,000 on the tax credit money coming in, which will cover, of your 600, that's 25% almost of the 600,000 that you invested. So right away, you know that you're only at risk for 75,000. There's 75% as opposed to 100%. So right away, we're doing pretty good because we factored in the tax credit money. All right. So the reason you want to shoot in a tax credit friendly zone is for that reason, is to get that money so that you can use it to start to recoup. Now, another strategy that I've often employed or recommend is use the tax credit money to pay for the marketing of your movie. So you say to your investor, yes, we're making 700, we're going to get 140,000 back, but we need to spend money to market the movie. We're going to use the tax credit money for the marketing money. So there's going to be no more investment required. So you can do that as well if you want. Or as part of the 700, you could build in, say, $50,000 to $75,000 worth of marketing funds, make your movie, say, for $525,000, tuck away 75 to do the marketing. But generally, you want to make your movie for 700 for the full amount, but you do need to spend money on marketing. So the tax credit money is a good place because the timing is perfect. It's like 6 months to a year after, while you're editing your movie, the money comes in for the tax credit and you can use that to market the movie, or you can use it as partial recoupment of the investment. So again, these are strategies that you have to employ. All right. So the question is, should you shoot in a tax credit friendly zone? And if so, which one? So Sally, I know you've had experience with this. So I'm asking you, number one, what's going to make your decision as to should you try to find a state to shoot in where they're going to give you a tax credit? And then number two, which one would that be? So tell me what your decision is going to be based on to say I'm going to shoot in a state that gives a tax credit.
Well, each state kind of has their own requirements, so just making sure that your film fits within those requirements. I know a lot of them have minimum spends. Some of them are $1,000,000, 500,000, $50,000. So just finding a state that that's in your budget level, and then there are different kind of incentives. Like there's a fully refundable tax credit or non-transferable tax credits. So it depends on what kind of process you want to go through. There's grants or rebates, stuff like that. But what's going to be the main basis for me choosing for my film, what state I want to film in, is one, making sure that my film meets all of the requirements for a state tax credit, and then seeing how much of a percentage I can get back and seeing what qualifies or doesn't qualify. Some states are a lot more strict, like I live in California. If I'm flying to a place like Kentucky or North Carolina or a different state that doesn't allow above the line expenses to be covered, then that could be a determining factor in whether or not I want to spend my time there, depending on how much money that's going to end up being for all my above the line crew and cast and everything like that. Cast is also another big reason why I would pick a state. I would want to pick some place that's local to a big city, or at least near a big city. Like Albuquerque, New Mexico, I think the closest place is maybe somewhere in Texas for like a big city that has a good amount of decent cast and people who are very talented. Not to say that there's no talented people in New Mexico, but just that there's a more variety and a bigger pool of talent. Same with LA. And then just kind of determining if let's say I do want to cast in from LA and I'm filming in New Mexico, how much that cost is going to be for me to fly everyone out, pay them, house them, feed them, and see if that kind of balances out with the tax credit. I know New Mexico's tax credit, the base is 25%, but let's say I'm spending 30% of my budget just flying people out and housing them, then it doesn't really make sense to use film in New Mexico because you're only getting 25% back.
What
So
about, I mean, so you've talked a lot of financial stuff, does it
Mhm.
make sense what you're going to get as opposed to what extra you're going to spend? But what about filming the movie? Like, is New Mexico going to be suitable? Is Albuquerque going to be suitable for the kind of movie you're making as opposed to, say, shooting it in Los Angeles? I mean, is there going to be any compromises because they don't have the right facilities or anything? Isn't that a consideration?
yeah, that's definitely a consideration. For New Mexico, so let's say we're doing Spine Scan, which is a medical drama. So we definitely need like a hospital. There's a big convention scene in the script. A lot of moving parts. I would say the script has a very clean, modern, just when I'm envisioning it. And there are places like that in New Mexico that would fit, but I think New Mexico has more of like a rustic, very um dramatic,
Western.
like Western vibe, like Breaking Bad is all everyone knows New Mexico, Albuquerque, Breaking Bad, very much that. And I feel like the film that we want to do is not doesn't have the same look or feel. So I feel like New Mexico would not be a fit more aesthetically wise. And then you also have to think about crews and stuff there as well.
So what about cruise? What do you have to think about there?
So after going to New Mexico and
Oh,
seeing
okay. So the
yeah.
truth is, the reason you're saying all this is because you went to New Mexico to check it out. You went to Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
Yeah, I went to the film office in Santa Fe and I looked around Albuquerque, met with some crew there, and unfortunately, New Mexico is a hotspot, or fortunately for crew that live there, is a hotspot for big studios. So there's a lot of shows going on, a lot
Yeah,
of movies.
Netflix has a huge studio there.
Netflix has a massive studio, and they're still building more um warehouse spaces there and more sets and stuff like that. So it's growing, even though it's already ginormous. So the crew there is not as vast, or there's not enough of them to fill those big shows or big movies and also independent features or small indie features. I mean, if I was a crew member living in New Mexico and I got offered a gig for an indie $700,000 indie or a $5 million TV
No,
show
a
that's going to be
$50 million
50
Netflix TV.
million,
Yeah.
then I would definitely take the 50 million. So I don't blame them at all for wanting to do that. But it just makes it a little bit harder for smaller projects like ours to be able to film there and, keep a crew together and kind of capitalize off the credit.
Yeah. So you told me you're a little concerned with getting a crew because most of the crew is, consumed by the bigger stuff and keeping it because if something big comes to town. So they don't necessarily have enough crew depth in their labor pool in order to satisfy the smaller indie films as opposed to the bigger stuff.
Yeah,
So that's a
exactly.
concern also. Yeah. Okay. So obviously you chose not to shoot in New Mexico because you felt after you did the math. I mean, I was doing it with you, obviously. We did the math and we said the cost of bringing the whole production here in terms of all the things you talked about, flights, housing, accommodations, meal, everything like this, and the predictability of the resources, primarily crew, did not necessarily justify the amount of what the net tax credit was going to be at the end of the day. And that's, you have to make that determination on a movie. You have to say, first of all, can I shoot the movie that I want to shoot in this region? Does it lend itself physically? Like, are the buildings correct? Is the landscape correct? Is the weather patterns? Is everything? Am I going to have to compromise the integrity and look of the movie just to get a tax credit? And I'm going to say, for the most part, on most indie films, you can pretty well get whatever you want in any state because it's called movie magic. You can dress something up. Like you need to walk into a huge office building in New York City. the way you can do it is you show an establishing shot of the building, and then you cut to your actor sitting in the boardroom of that building, but the boardroom happens to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and this establishing shots in New York City. So you can pretty well get whatever you want anywhere as long as you're creative. But I think the bigger decision was crew, actors, equipment, work ethic, and then what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. And you have to really think about it a lot, because every filmmaker that I speak to, every independent filmmaker says, oh, I'm going to New Mexico because they give a 25% tax credit, and it's an extra 10% if you shoot outside what they call the zone, Albuquerque, Santa Fe. So it's 35. So I'm going to shoot in, southern New Mexico and Las Cruces or something like that. Then I'm going to get 35%. And my budget is $500,000. So I'm going to get, or let's make the math easy, $1 million. So I'm going to get $350,000 in tax credits. No, you're not. All right. First of all, you're only getting tax credits on the expenses that qualify. And when you do the math, Sally, you did the math many times. You did extensive spreadsheets on what would qualify and what wouldn't. So it's basically, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on what qualified labor is, but just as an example, if people who live in New Mexico, they qualify because these are job incentive programs. That's why the states give these tax credits. But me and you coming in as outsiders, our salaries aren't going to qualify because we don't pay taxes in New Mexico. We don't live there. Now, there's ways around that. You can do what we call loan out companies and things like that. So there's lots of tricks to the trade and how to manage that kind of thing. But for the most part, I'm going to say in a program like that, 60% of, say, 2/3, 65% of your budget will be qualified expenditures, and 35% won't be. All right. So you're only going to get a 35% tax credit on 65% of your expenditures, not 100%. So when you do the math on that and you net it all out, you realize you're only getting a third on 2/3. So that is not a 35% tax credit. That's like a 22% tax credit. So that's what you have to do your math properly so that you understand how the numbers actually play out. Because a lot of people after the fact say, wait a second, I was expecting $350,000 and I only got $220,000. They say, yeah, because that's how the program works. Did you not read it? Did you not do your math? Did you not figure it out? And a lot of filmmakers make that error. So don't make that error.
Would you suggest filmmakers to, if they're not suited with numbers or the accounting process, to hire an accountant to go manage the numbers and just facilitate the whole process?
So it's not an accountant that you need. What you need is a good line producer who works in that region, who has done tax credits in that region before and understands exactly what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. Now, there are accountants who can do this also, but they have to be in the region, or they have to be working in the region and understand that program. Because as Sally said, each program is different. I mean, just briefly just go over California, because California is a complicated one.
Yeah, California is a very complicated tax credit. The thing that's kind of nice about New Mexico is they don't really have a project capped as far as like funding wise. Or they've never hit their cap. California does have a
Also,
cap.
it starts at a lower level. You can qualify
Yeah.
at any level. You don't need
Yeah.
a certain, your budget, you could have $50,000 budget. You can qualify.
Yeah, California, I think the minimum is $1 million. So you have to have a budget of at least $1 million, and then they do have a budget cap. And it's not just an overall budget cap. They have different categories of like independence, non-independence, budgets of over 10 million. Like each of these categories has their own
Yeah,
cap spending.
relocating shows, this, that. I mean, because it's a $330 million program every year. That's what it is today. It could change in the future.
Yeah, so they allocate that 330 million to those different categories. And each category has its own separate cap. And then you have to apply for whichever, either if you're doing, I would say everyone watching this would probably be doing under 10 million independent film. So you'd be applying towards that category, and then it's a 2-phase application process to get through. And through the first phase, they only accept the first, I think it's 200% of films based off a jobs ratio. So that's how the jobs ratio is based on how much you're spending compared to how many jobs or people you're employing that live outside the Los Angeles zone versus
No, not
inside?
necessarily. It's the job ratio is primarily about how how many people you're employing. Like how much labor are you employing in the state of California relative to your overall budget?
They just, yeah, they gave special bumps if you're
They
hiring
they
people.
want you to employ a lot of people.
Mhm.
That's why they want to give you a tax credit, because you're employing a lot of people and you're paying them fair wages.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyways,
Uh,
it'll make your head spin. The California application process is tricky. Nobody asks you to do these job ratios. They might do them internally at their various places, but it's way trickier to navigate it than it is in other states. And
yeah,
that's because everybody wants to shoot in California, because there's, all the resources and the studios and the actors and the people and the weather, great weather. Um, but they have limited funds in that program.
yeah.
So you got to choose. You got to make a choice. Now, look at you don't need a tax credit. You can shoot, and just shoot anywhere you want, or shoot in a state that gives tax credits and not apply for the tax credit. A lot of people, it's too complicated, it's too much work, they don't do it. You don't have to have tax credits to shoot an indie film. But if you're got the time and the interest, it's basically a contribution back to your movie if you can get a tax credit. So why not apply for something? Why not go for it if everything else, all else being equal? Like you can shoot the kind of movie you want. You can enjoy the experience. You can live in the place you're going, and why not? Like, I mean, it's why leave that money on the table if it's available? Um,
Jeff, would you recommend filmmakers to apply to multiple tax credits? Like say they're debating between filming in 3 different locations. Can you apply to 3 different tax credits at the same time and then pick?
Yes, you can, but it's a lot of work, as you know, Sally. You've done the applications, and it's a bit of a hassle. So look at some programs you submit, and they just you let them know that you're going to do it, but you don't need to be accepted. The fact that you shoot in their state, you're going to qualify after, and you just have to submit your expenses. So you don't really even have to apply or qualify. In the states where you do have to apply and qualify because there's limited funds and you have to go into the queue, and they know that they're saying, okay, if you do this, then we will pay you. Then yeah, you have to apply and qualify. So absolutely, you could do it in various states because you're not sure you're going to get accepted. And if you have a shooting deadline, say in 6 months from now, and you say I can be happy to shoot in one of these 3 states, and you want a tax credit, and you don't know which one is going to accept you, then apply to all 3. And then hopefully you get accepted to all 3 and you can choose. But if you only get accepted to one, the choice is made for you if that's, if you want the tax credit.
Mhm. Got it.
So
So, Jeff, you said that sometimes, pretty much all the time, the script is never finished until the movie is shot. Do you think there's certain things that could warrant a change to the script based on which state you're applying to for a tax credit? Say you really want to shoot in New Mexico, you found the crew, you found the right locations, you found everything, but there's certain things that just wouldn't work based on your script. Do you feel like it's worth changing those things in your script to fit Albuquerque, or would you say that it's not worth it?
I'd say, yeah, sure, you can do that if you're flexible in terms of a director and a writer and you're creative and you don't mind doing that. But I would say for the most part, you don't need to do that. Like literally, there's very few places that aren't going to be able to like every state when they advertise their tax credits, they all say, if you go on their websites at the beginning, it says we offer everything. We offer, like, in terms of physical place. Okay, we offer mountains, deserts, lakes, cities, and we offer buildings. Here's our big cities. Here's our small countryside. Everybody offers everything. And for the most part, with a small indie film, you can probably be creative to get whatever you need without changing your script too much. Unless you see something that's really magical that you didn't expect in a place, that is you didn't expect to shoot in, and they say, hey, look at our beautiful convention center. We're going to let you shoot there for free because we want to promote it in your film. And then you might say, hey, let's change a scene and make it in the convention center because we never assumed we could afford a convention center. So let's write it in. But for the most part, it doesn't involve a lot of juggling because of what I said, movie magic. If you know how to shoot properly. Listen, I shot an entire gymnastics film that is based at UCLA, And we only shot 2 days at UCLA. We shot the exteriors. The rest of that film was shot in Toronto. So when you see the girl walking into the gym, the gymnast at UCLA, you see one shot, she walks into the gym at UCLA. And then the reverse shot when she's walking in, the gym's in Toronto. And that's because we got a really good tax credit there. And nobody ever questioned. As a matter of fact, the people at UCLA said, wow, that gym's nicer than ours. And the movie looked great. So this is how you do movies, right? All movies are done that way. I mean, all series, like the series Suits, if you watch that on Netflix, it's set in New York, but I know because I'm from Toronto formerly. I know it was shot in Toronto. I mean, I see all the buildings there. Plus, I know when it was being shot. I remember it was being shot there. You can't tell. Nobody can tell the difference. The odd thing you can tell, but for the most part, nobody can tell, and nobody cares anyways. So you pretty well can, any place can pretty well accommodate what you need to do, especially in a low budget indie. But I would say the bonus is, as I said before, sometimes these places are so anxious, the smaller places are so anxious to have you come that they'll throw things in to accommodate it because they want to show off their region a bit more. They want you to be successful because they want to attract more filmmakers and more tourism, by the way. Like one of the things that films do, especially the big films, little films don't do this, but the big films, if something is hugely popular, like I'll give you an example, okay? I live here in San Diego, they shot Top Gun and Top Gun 2 here in San Diego, and at a Air Force base called Miramar Air Force Base, like a Marine base. People come when they come to San Diego. They want to tour. That's a tourist attraction now because they want to see where Top Gun was shot. They want to see where Tom Cruise took off in the planes and walked down and it's fun. I mean, that happens everywhere. Every movie where movies get shot, people want to see. And so it creates tourism for the city. It creates obviously tourism for the place it was shot and everything. So it's good for the local economy to have things shown to show off stuff and to attract people because that attracts spending. What we call economic activity. So it's a win-win for everybody. These states that offer tax incentives, they do it because they've done the math and they figure that you're bringing a lot of money to shoot your film there. You're employing a lot of their people. You're spending a lot of money on their local resources, their hotels, their catering, their equipment, their Ubers, their this, their that, transportation, everything. And that's good to stimulate their local economy. Plus, if your movie works out well, it will be a billboard, and it's an advertisement for people coming to see where the movie was shot. So again, win-win. So you get the financial incentive that they give you and they get everything else. They get the employment, the economic activity, the tourist attraction, they get everything on top of it. If it all goes well. So that's financing in a nutshell. Okay. I mean, obviously there's a heck of a lot more to it. That whole exercise that we just went through in terms of the negotiation with the investors, that's all real. Now, you're going to need a pitch deck for that. The pitch deck, do not use a very extensive deck. You need 15 slides. That's it. Right? People throw together these 70, 80 slide decks because they think they have to show the state of the industry and everything like that. Remember, when you're pitching to high net worth individuals, they're busy. This is a small investment for them, generally, a film. They're going to do it because they like you and trust you mostly. What you're selling them is your credibility more so than the investment, because the investment generally is not a great investment. Like the stuff they're looking at in real estate or stocks and bonds and biotech is high tech is usually more attractive in terms of returns and less risk. Well, some, not necessarily less risk like biotech and high tech, but it's fun to do films. So if you like them, you're credible, you make it fun, and you have a good plan, then you have a good chance of getting their money. And so like a 15 slide deck would be the first slide, hello, this is who I am. Second slide, here's what my film's about. Third slide, some comparables as to other films that would be comparable to this. Slides 4 through 7 would be like your distribution plan, how you're going to sell it. Well, first of all, where you're going to make it, how much it's going to cost, then how you're going to sell it, how much revenue you're going to forecast. Then you get into the deal terms. Like here's what we're offering. Here's the cash flow, the time frame that you're going to get it back. And then the fun stuff, all the stuff I mentioned you can do. And that's one slide cameo. So literally in 15 slides, you can tell the story you don't want it to be more than that, because you want to be able to tell your story in 15 to 20 minutes, because they like brevity, because they're busy. And if they have questions, they'll ask you to go into more detail. But credibility is everything when you're pitching to high net worth individuals, because literally they are not investing in a movie, they are investing in a filmmaker. All right, that's what they invest in. You it's like betting on the jockey, not the horse. All right, so that's what this is. If they like you and trust you, they are betting in the fact they're investing in their bet is that you can do what you say you're going to do, which is make a good movie and sell it. That's what they're betting on, because they don't know anything about the movie business. People say, "Oh, I need 10 slides on what the story's about and who's in it." And I said, "No, you don't." The truth is, they don't even really care what movie you're making. They care that you're a good movie maker and you're going to do what you're going to say you're going to do. Now, they're not going to necessarily invest in something that's super violent or pornographic or something like that. You have to be cognizant of that. But do they know what a good horror script is? Do they know what a good drama is? No, they don't. They watch movies and they can talk about it a little bit, but they don't know how movies are made or crafted. They're not. They're not that interested in the details yet. When they invest, they might be curious because it's fun, right? But for the most part, you don't have to go into those kind of details. If you do, actually, you're going to lose them in your pitch. You just have to. What the most important part is to say what you said before, Sally, is even though I'm not experienced, I'm putting together a crew that is experienced. So I'm not going to make any errors. You can trust me. Trust is everything. The one word that matters the most is trust. And trust comes with credibility. And credibility is based on experience. All right. So you're credible when you're experienced because you've been down the road, you know what to expect. And when you're credible, people will trust you. And that's why you need to surround yourself with a good team. If you haven't done it before, surround yourself with people who have, so that you can deliver on what you say. There's just a couple other things I just want to say about this. Never, ever, ever take money from people who can't afford to lose it, especially your family and friends. All right. So some of the people you're going to go to are going to be family and friends, because they're going to want to support you because they love you and they want to see you do well in life and they want to see you live your dream. And if your dream is to make a movie, they're going to want to support you, like your parents and your siblings and some of your best friends. All right. And it's nice to have their money, but don't take their money if they can't afford to lose it, because the worst thing you could do is they're going to feel bad that they lost their money, but you're going to feel really bad that you lost their money. And believe it or not, and I'm talking from direct experience here, all right, it is way more painful to lose their money than it is to lose your own money. As much as you don't want to lose your own money, like your hard-earned $20,000 that you're going to put in, you do not want to lose your parents' $200,000 that they were going to use for their retirement or their vacation or their new car or their home or whatever they were going to use it for, or your friends. You don't want to. You're going to feel terrible. You're not going to sleep at night if you lose their money. Your money, you're going to feel bad and you're going to be upset, but you'll sleep after a while because your money, and you'll move on. But you'll always feel beholden to them. So don't take it, even from people you don't know, even from third-party investors. You make sure that whatever they're investing, they're going into it knowing that they could lose it all, perhaps other than the tax credit money, if you're going to apply that backwards. All right. And that they can afford to lose it. And you tell them that honestly. So one of the slides in your presentation is going to be what we call risk. And it's going to be big, bold letters saying, do not invest if you can't afford to lose this money. And you say it to them up front and you make it very clear. Now they're going to say, why are you saying this? Are you intending to lose the money? You say, no, I'm intending to do well. But I'm telling you, this is a very high risk investment, this industry. And I'm being honest with you that it could go sour, as most films do. And that's probably mostly because they're not well managed, but we're going to manage it better. But we can't control the marketplace. So if we, historically, very few films make their money back. And if you can't afford to lose this money, then you probably should not invest. You tell them that up front. It's super important to be totally honest and transparent with your investors, because you don't want to lose sleep at night. You don't want them angry at you. And if you do good and you're honest with them, they'll maybe support you in another film, a couple of others, especially when they're your friends and family. All right. So the last thing that people want to know is, how do you find these high net worth individuals? Where are they? Who are they? And where are they? How do you like network with them? So high net worth individuals are exactly what that means. They're people with money. It could be who knows who has money. Like, obviously the ones that come to mind for most people are doctors and dentists and lawyers, people, professionals who have good careers, who make a lot of money in their careers. So those people have money, right? People who are in businesses, who, run businesses or do investing, real estate people, stock, brokers, that kind of stuff. They often have money, right? But not everybody, not every doctor and not every real estate broker has money. Some people don't. So you got to determine which ones do and which ones don't. And then, there's people who have just done well in other things, and there's athletes and performers and people who just have done well in their lives who have money. Some people have just inherited a lot of money, so they come by it, by inheritance. Anyways, you determine who has the money. Now, how do you find these people? You generally have to have a network. You generally have to, if you don't have these people in your life, you're going to have to find somebody who has them in their life. So let's say, just for lack of a better example, you're a young filmmaker. You don't have access to any high net worth individuals. You don't know any because you haven't traveled in those circles, whatever. But let's say you have a family doctor. And this is a classic cliche, stereotypical example. Your family doctor is a doctor and she's doing well. You fear like she's got some money because she's a family doctor or whatever. And you say to her one day on you're having an appointment, I'm a filmmaker, I'm making a film, and I need to people who have money I need to pitch to them because I need hopefully them to invest. Would you be willing to introduce me to some of your other doctor friends or some of your country club friends or some of the people that you hang out with? Because the people have more money than the people that I know. Would you be willing to connect me with some of them? And if she likes you and says yes, and arranges a meeting, and then all of a sudden you have people to pitch to. I mean, that's how this works. It's very tricky to get a network, Like I once told a filmmaker, she said, I understand what you're saying, but I just have no access to people who have money. No, I just don't even know where to look for them. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you, this is crazy. Like, I mean, there's a million suggestions on how to do this, but I'm just saying one of them. Okay. Said, generally speaking, people who have money are members of country clubs. Not necessarily, but people who are members of country clubs generally have money because it's expensive to join a country club, right? Like a golf and country club. So generally the people who are members can afford it. Otherwise they wouldn't be members. So they have money. So that would be a place where you could find people who have money. Now, you can't just walk up to the front gate of a country club and say, hey, here I am. I need to meet your members because I want to ask them for money. You need to integrate. You need to get into those circles. So what could you do if you have no other way to do it because you don't know anybody? Maybe take a job at a country club, like work in catering, be a hostess, work at the golf club. And I know this is a super crazy roundabout way to meet people because you're a filmmaker and you don't want to be working as a waitress in a country club, or you don't want to be working, as in the golf shop or cleaning people's clubs or whatever. All right. So I know it's crazy and it makes no sense because you're going to not be doing anything that you really want to do. But what you really want to do is meet these people. And if you are friendly and you get to be the hostess in like one of these places, or say a high-end restaurant or something like that, and you're friendly and you know how to work it, because you don't want the country club saying, hey, you came here to try to tap into our members' money. But sooner or later you just meet people, and when you meet them you can have a casual conversation, and it takes time. All right. And you say, I'm a filmmaker, I'm making a film and I need money, and can I talk to you? Can I show you my deck? So for lack of a better way to do it, I mean, that's real low level stuff. And again, super not on target of what you really want to do in your life, but sometimes that's the only option you have. I mean, if you're lucky, you know people already, or you know somebody who knows somebody. Like maybe Sally, your parents, they might not have money, but they have a friend who has money. And so they ask that friend to do you a favor, to either speak to you or introduce you to some of their friends. And then the rest of it is, are you credible? Can you do a good pitch? Are you friendly? Do they like you? Do they want to help you? So getting into circles is an art. Sometimes you're lucky you're born into them or you find them quickly. Sometimes you're not, and you got to work them, and you got to figure out how to insert yourself into one of those circles. And it's not easy. But is anything easy in the film business? Is anything easy in life? I mean, generally when, if you're not born into it. So you got to do what you got to do. You got to be creative. You got to give it your best shot, be strategic, and hopefully it'll come. It'll work. And if it doesn't, you try something else. So if you're looking for an easy route, find another business. This is not the one. But if you're willing to do what it takes, and I'm not saying you have to compromise who you are as a person or do anything like that. I'm just saying you have to be strategic. You have to be smart. You have to say, unfortunately, I was not born with a silver spoon. I was not born into high net worth individual circles. I don't know any. I'm not networking with them, but I know they exist. Here's where I think I can find them: at high-end car dealerships, at high-end restaurants, at high-end country clubs, at high-end whatever. That's where these people with the money hang out. How do I infiltrate that? How do I get in a nice way so they don't appear that I'm, that I can still be credible, be professional, be personable. And it might take me a year or 2 years of doing something totally that I hate just so that I can meet some people in those circles. And again, that's one example. I mean, it could be that literally you stumble into somebody at a coffee shop. It could be, who knows, but people say, oh, I go to parties and I network and I do this. And I say, yeah, right. You go to a bar, yeah, you could target people, try to check out what car they're driving and see if, but that's all. I'm not sure the car you drive necessarily matches how much money you have, but you got to, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do, you give it your best shot. You try to be creative and strategic and hope that it works out. That's it. I mean, that's financing and tax credits. And, now we're going to start to talk about preparing for the film, how to do pre-production, how to do all your sketch so that you can shoot a good film on the budget level you have. You got to be really, really well prepared. And, like you just sold your investors on being credible. Now you got to deliver. So now we got to start talking about how to, one, make that really good film, and two, what to figure out in terms of your distribution and marketing strategy before you make the film. So that's what we're going to talk about in the upcoming episodes. Any other comments?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covered it all.
Okay. Yep. I mean, Jared, in terms of the high net worth individual networking thing, I mean, do you have that? Do you have circles like that? I'm just curious.
I probably have under 10 people that I could probably reach out to if I needed investments for some sort of project. I'm not that close with any of them, so it would definitely be a little just throw out in the dark there, but there's a few people that I could reach out to, but I wasn't born into those circles or anything like that, no.
Okay, well, first of all, 10 is a lot. 10 is like 9 more than what most people have. Even if you have 1 or 2, that's enough to get started. What about you, Sally?
Yeah, I know probably a handful of people that I could reach out to.
And if you went to them, you think that they would want to support you? Like, do you think that you would be credible and that they would be receptive?
I would say 2 of them. Well, one of them I'm not super close to, but I have like a personal relationship with, so I'd say yes to one. The other ones are connected to that one, so maybe if they believe in me, they could convince or persuade the other person to believe in me.
And that's how it works, by the way. If you can get one, you can say, hey, I know you're only good for, say, 100,000 of the 700,000. But I also know you have more friends than I do who have money. So can you either introduce me or maybe help me pitch to them? Because if you're coming in, can you invite a couple of your other friends to come in? That happens all the time.
I'd say out of my 10, I could probably realistically 2 to 4 would actually be interested.
Well, that's good. That's a good start. But the 2 to 4 who are interested maybe can connect you with 2 to 4 more. So that's how it works. That's why they call it networking. You start with some, you go a little further, and then hopefully the people who are in on it, like if you can get one in, then they can make you more credible, because getting the first person's always the hardest. Well, generally you're the first person, okay, but not for the big amount. But getting the first person is usually the hardest, because once you've had the first, you can use the fact that you have one in to get the next person. Nobody wants to be first. They all want to say, after you've got a couple other people come back, I could be more interested. So nobody wants to take the risk the first time. So by the way, one of the things you can do to get the first 1 or 2 people in is give them a little bit of a better deal. You give them a little bit of a bonus. So you say for your 100,000, you were going to get, this deal, say 15%, right? But if you're the first one in, I'm going to give you an extra 2.5%. And it's going to come out of my share. I'm not going to dilute the other investors, because they're still going to get their 15%. But out of my share that I was going to get, I'll give you an extra 2.5, because you're the first one in, you're helping me, and I recognize that there's value to that. So those are things you can do. There's lots of little things you can do. Okay, I think that's it for now. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of We're Making a Movie. Make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for our next episode.